Star Trek, Primitive Passenger Season 5, Episode 2, Calculated Risk. Plasma fire lit the void around the Dominion shipyard, brief flashes marking the destruction of yet another defensive platform. Massive black hammerhead drones, each the size of a standard shuttle, blinked in and out of existence in precise patterns. The Jem'Hadar vessels scattered before them like leaves in a hurricane. "Status report," Nolan called from his position at the bridge console. The Havoc held position at the edge of the system, just beyond the range of Dominion sensors. Lexa stood at her tactical station, her eyes bright with the thrill of combat. 5 more defense platforms down. The Jem'Hadar are clustering in the central hub of the facility. She permitted herself a small, predatory smile. They think that will protect them from the protocol. Fascinating adaptation, Ilara commented from her seat in the command chair. Her tone remained neutral, but her eyes tracked the sensor readings with keen interest. They've modified their shield harmonics as well. The backup generators are coming online faster than in previous encounters. "Won't help them," Nolan said flatly. He tapped a control sequence, highlighting a section of the shipyard. "Lexa, focus drone strikes here and here. Let's see how their new shields hold up." The drones responded instantly, their coordinated assault overwhelming the enhanced defenses. Shields flared and died, leaving the clustered Jem'Hadar exposed. "Beginning transport sweeps," Ilara announced. On the view screen, entire squadrons of Jem'Hadar soldiers simply vanished, their atoms scattered into the corona of the system's sun. Lexa stepped closer to the main display, studying the tactical readouts. "This is almost too easy. They must know these measures won't stop us." "Maybe that's not the point," Ilara replied. "Every adaptation gives them more data. They're learning." Nolan watched as the last of the Jem'Hadar signatures winked out. The shipyard hung broken in space, its partially constructed vessels now little more than expensive debris. "How many?" he asked. "Just over 12,000 Jem'Hadar eliminated," Lexa reported, "plus whatever they had in stasis for the new ships. The facility is a total loss." "Good." Nolan straightened. "Time to move on to the next target. But first, Ilara, show me everything you found about those shield modifications. I want to know exactly what we're teaching them." The bridge of the Havoc was designed for tactical precision, its dark walls lined with displays showing fleet movements and battle analyses. Nolan leaned against the central console while Ilara brought up the sensor logs from their recent engagement. "Look at the shield modulation patterns," Ilara said, highlighting a sequence of energy signatures. "They've completely redesigned their backup systems since our last raid. The recovery time is down to 3.7 seconds. And it didn't matter one bit," Lexa interjected. She stepped around the console, pointing to footage of the drones slicing through the enhanced defenses. The feathering maneuvers cut right through them. "They might as well have been using paper for shields." "That's what concerns me," Ilara said. "They committed significant resources to this adaptation, knowing it wouldn't be enough. They're gathering data, testing our responses." Nolan studied the tactical display showing their next target, the massive shipyards at Toros 2. "Good. Every failed adaptation forces them to rethink their approach. Let them burn through their R&D battling us, rather than investing in new ways to conquer the Alpha Quadrant. The Toros facility is 5 times larger than anything we've hit before," Lexa said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "Multiple construction bays, heavy defensive installations, at least 24 squadrons of Jem'Hadar fighters permanently stationed there. And this time they'll be ready for us," Ilara added. "The protocol isn't a surprise anymore. They'll have countermeasures in place." "Countermeasures will break," Lexa said. "Then they'll develop new ones, and we'll break those too." "It's beautiful, really." Nolan pulled up the facility schematics they'd extracted from their last raid. "We'll need to modify our approach. A hidden assault would give them too much time to implement whatever surprises they've prepared." He highlighted several sections of the shipyard. "What if we split the drone force? Hit multiple targets simultaneously, overwhelm their response capabilities. "I can coordinate 8 separate attack groups," Lexa said, "and keep a sufficient reserve to flood in once we have a breach." Ilara's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried a note of warning. "The more we push them, the more they'll have to adjust their overall strategy to address us." "They're learning," Nolan repeated, his eyes fixed on the massive facility. "And so are we." He straightened. Decision made. "Lexa, begin programming the drone formations. I want attack patterns that will force them to show us everything they've got." "Including whatever they're really working on?" Ilara asked quietly. Nolan nodded. "Especially that." All drone squadrons in position," Lexa announced. The Havoc maintained its distance, hidden behind a dense asteroid field near Tauros II, ready to commence simultaneous strikes on all 8 target zones. Nolan gave a sharp nod. "Execute." Across the massive shipyard complex, thousands of drones materialized simultaneously. Their appearance was met with an immediate response, but not the one they expected. The facility's shields pulsed with an unusual energy signature. "Multiple drones lost in zones 3 and 7, Lexa reported, her voice sharp with surprise. "The shields are generating some kind of feedback pulse on contact." On the main viewer, several drones attempting to blink through the shields simply exploded, their remains scattering into space. "They've found a way to weaponize the shield harmonics against the blink drive," Ilara said, studying the readings. "Crude, but effective." "Fascinating," Lexa breathed, already adjusting drone formations. "The feedback pulse creates a localized subspace distortion. Any drone trying to blink through is torn apart at the quantum level. Then we'll give them something else to think about." Nolan's voice was cold and precise. "Lexa, concentrate fire on their shield generators. Maximum yield. Sustained barrage. Let's see how long they can maintain those fancy new shields under real pressure." The remaining drones shifted tactics, their coordinated fire hammering specific points in the defense grid. The shipyard shields blazed with energy as they absorbed the assault. "They're routing additional power to the targeted sections," Ilara reported, "but their shield matrix is showing signs of instability. And keep pushing." Nolan tracked the battle on his tactical display. "Lexa, status on the Jem'Hadar response?" "That's odd," Lexa said, brow furrowed. "They're holding position inside the facility. Minimal fighter deployment." Her eyes widened slightly. "Wait, picking up multiple automated defense platforms coming online, the unmanned." The platforms emerged from concealed bays around the shipyard, their weapons immediately tracking the drone formations. Their response time was faster than any Jem'Hadar pilot, their targeting solutions impossibly precise. "Well, that's new," Nolan said. "Show me what you got, Lexa." Lexa's eyes closed as she directed the drone swarms in an intricate dance of destruction. Where the Jem'Hadar relied on aggressive, straightforward tactics, these automated platforms demonstrated cold machine efficiency. Several more drones were destroyed before Lexa found the pattern in their targeting algorithms. "I got you now," she whispered. The drones adapted their attack vectors, staying just ahead of the platform's tracking systems. Meanwhile, the sustained assault on the shield generators was beginning to show results. "Shield integrity at 60% and falling," Ilara announced. "They're trying to redistribute the load, but..." The first shield generator exploded in a brilliant flash, creating a cascade effect through the power grid. Sections of the defensive screen began to collapse. "Now," Nolan commanded, "full assault through the gaps. Protocol. The Jem'Hadar, but I want samples of those defense platforms. You know how much I love stealing tech." Glancing over to Ilara, he gave her a nod and she blinked the havoc into the fight. The battle shifted into its final phase. With their shields compromised, the shipyard's defenses crumbled. The automated platforms fought on with mechanical persistence, but without the shield screen to protect them, they were eventually overwhelmed. "Facility secured," Lexa reported, satisfaction evident in her tone. Remaining Jem'Hadar eliminated via protocol. We've captured 6 automated defense platforms, mostly intact. Casualties? Nolan asked. 217 drones lost, Lexa replied. Our heaviest losses yet, but still well within acceptable parameters. The automated defenses are interesting, but nothing special, Hilara said, examining the preliminary scans. But I'm more concerned about why they deployed them. The Dominion isn't known for replacing living soldiers with machines, unless they're running out of soldiers, Nolan mused, or preparing for that possibility. He studied the captured platforms on his display. Either way, we've given them something new to think about. Let's see what they come up with next. You almost sound like you're enjoying this, Hilara observed. Nolan's expression became whimsical. He tossed his head from side to side. Somebody always needs killing, Hilara. And shrugged his shoulders. Who's better at that than us? He turned to Lexa. Begin analysis of those platforms. I want to know everything about them before we hit our next target. Already on it, Lexa replied, her excitement barely contained. Their targeting systems are remarkably sophisticated, almost familiar. Hilara shot Nolan a concerned look, but said nothing. The implication was clear. The Dominion was learning from them, just as they were learning from the Dominion. The question was, who would adapt faster? East, Dominion fleet dropping out of warp, Hilara announced. 6 heavy cruisers, 12 attack ships. Nolan's response was immediate. Let's jump in with both feet. Blink us right into their formation. Heat up everything we got. The Havoc materialized at the heart of the Dominion formation, its hulking mass dwarfing even their largest cruisers. Before the enemy fleet could react, every weapon port on the massive vessel opened fire simultaneously. The Havoc tumbled and spun. Phaser arrays blazed crimson trails through space, while quantum torpedo spreads created a web of destruction across multiple vectors. The crown jewel of the Havoc's arsenal, the particle weapon salvaged from the Borg sphere, powered up with an ominous hum that resonated through the bridge. Its brilliant white beam lanced out, sweeping through space like the wrath of an angry god. Where it touched Dominion ships, their shields simply ceased to exist. Hull plating turned to vapor, and entire sections of vessels peeled away into space. Rotating through targeting solutions, Nolan said, his voice calm as the battle raged. Multiple weapon systems tracked different targets, creating a sphere of devastation with the Havoc at its center. A Dominion cruiser tried to bring its weapons to bear, only to have its entire port side sheared away by another sweep of the particle beam. Nolan calmly hammering away at his console. Disruptor cannons joined the symphony of destruction, their green bolts punching through already weakened shields. The space around the Havoc became a kaleidoscope of weapons fire, red phasers, green disruptors, blue quantum torpedoes, and that devastating white beam painting abstract patterns of annihilation against the backdrop of stars. 2 attack ships attempted to slip past the barrage, looking for a blind spot in the Havoc's firing arc. They found none. Secondary phaser banks caught them in crossfire, while a spread of transphasic torpedoes, another Borg souvenir, eliminated their shields and propulsion in one devastating salvo. Their shields might as well be tissue paper, Nolan observed, rotating the particle beam through another deadly arc. 3 more ships split apart under its assault, their hulls glowing white-hot where the beam touched them. The Dominion formation had devolved into chaos, their coordinated attack plans shattered by the sheer overwhelming force of the Havoc's arsenal. Lexa coordinated her drone attacks from the perimeter, catching ships trying to escape the Havoc's devastating weapon. Something's wrong, she said. I'm not detecting any Jem'Hadar signatures. These ships are running with other species as their crews. Snatch 'em up. Nolan adjusted the particle beam's intensity. Start pulling their crews out. Let's find out what they're playing at. Initiating transport sweeps, Lexa confirmed. Routing captures to drone pattern buffers. She paused. What about the Vorta? Keep everyone alive for now, Nolan ordered. Bounce them to the Havoc's main buffer array. We'll sort them out later. The battle devolved into a methodical harvest. With no Jem'Hadar to offer resistance, the remaining Dominion ships were quickly disabled. Their crews vanished in waves of transporter activity, leaving behind ghost ships adrift in space. That's the last of them, Lexa reported. Only 3 Vorta from the whole fleet, just under 40,000 other personnel, and no Jem'Hadar. Begin drone recovery, Nolan ordered. Ilara, tag any salvageable ships. They might be useful after repairs. Ilara was already moving undamaged ships into the Havoc's hold with precise blink jumps. 3 cruisers and 5 attack ships are worth saving. The rest are scrap. Nolan stood from his console. Time to have a chat with our guests. Lexa, finish cleanup here. Ilara, you have the bridge. As he strode toward the hold, Nolan considered the implications. The Dominion wasn't just adapting their technology. They were changing their entire tactical doctrine. No Jem'Hadar crews meant the protocol couldn't hurt them. But it also meant something had forced them to make that choice. The Founders had to know that Nolan wouldn't think any more of tossing other species into the sun than he would Jem'Hadar. So what was their play? The Situation Room on the Havoc hummed with activity as holographic displays showed detailed analyses of the recent battle. 3 of the Vorta prisoners had already confirmed Nolan's suspicions. The Dominion was actively seeking alternatives to their Jem'Hadar forces. Look at these power readings, Lexa said, highlighting energy signatures from the captured ships. They've completely redesigned their weapons systems to interface with automated targeting. She adjusted several drone schematics on her display. I'm pushing more power to the replication nodes. We lost a lot of drones in that last fight. The drones will replenish themselves, Nolan said. What interests me is why the Dominion suddenly thinks machines and these other species are better than their perfect soldiers. Ilara stepped closer to the central display, studying the pattern of Dominion adaptations she'd mapped. They're changing tactics. Each adaptation moves further away from their reliance on Jem'Hadar. The Dominion's getting desperate. They're burning through resources, trying to find ways around us. Good, Lexa said, returning to her drone modifications. Let them waste time and energy replacing their perfect soldiers. I have hundreds of years of battles in my memory banks, and I learned from the greatest commander in the galaxy. She leaned toward Nolan and made eye contact as she finished. I'm still not worried. Nolan called up a tactical display showing 3 Dominion installations. Then let's push harder. Here, a shipyard supply facility, a Ketracel White production plant, and this cargo operations center in this sector. We hit all 3 simultaneously. See how they respond with their new tactics. The replacements will fight differently than the Jem'Hadar, Ilara noted. More unpredictable, less reliant on direct confrontation. Could be interesting. Then let's go learn something. Nolan expanded the tactical display. Lexa, start programming attack vectors. I want to expose as much as we can. He paused, studying the facility layouts, and make sure the protocol is still active on all drones. Just because they're not clones doesn't mean we can't ruin their day. The 3 of them bent over the display, planning their next strike. The Dominion wasn't just adapting their tactics, they were expending their efforts on Nolan instead of the Alpha. Bring up prisoner 1147, Nolan said. The fleet manifest shows she's their fleet commander. A female materialized in the secure chamber, her gray skin's bioluminescent patterns pulsing with barely contained anger. She wore the insignia of command on her uniform. Commander Zyra, I presume, Nolan said, studying her from behind his console. Let's talk about your fleet's new configuration. I will tell you nothing, she said, her black eyes reflecting the room's harsh lighting. My people do not break. According to our Vorta prisoners, your people, the Rendali, are being groomed as the Dominion's next generation of shock troops. The Rendali stood perfectly still, but her eyes darted about the room, studying, assessing. The Founders believe we will be immune to your protocol, Zyra said, her voice surprisingly melodic. We are not clones like the Jem'Hadar. We have chosen to serve. And how's that working out for you? Nolan asked. I'm sure if you had chosen not to serve, the Jem'Hadar would have paid your planet a visit. Our people are strong. We adapt. We survive. A hint of pride crept into the Rendali's voice. The Jem'Hadar were built for war, but we evolved for it. That is why the Founders chose us. Zyra's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those black eyes. Interesting choice of words. Nolan tapped his console. You know about the Jem'Hadar protocol. What we do to them, everyone knows. Her voice dripped contempt. You murder them by the thousands. Tens of thousands, actually, Nolan corrected. And right now, I have 37,000 of your people in my pattern buffers. He leaned forward. Would you like to see them? Before she could respond, Nolan transferred 1,000 Rendali into one of the Havoc's massive holds. He brought up the video feed. Her people stood confused, disoriented from their time in the buffer. That's just the first group, Nolan said quietly. Should I show them what happens to those who oppose me, or would you prefer to have a conversation? Zyra's bioluminescent patterns flickered rapidly, apparently an involuntary response. You wouldn't. The Dominion will. The Dominion isn't here. Nolan's finger hovered over the control. Last chance for the first 1,000. We can do this all day. Their eyes met in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Zyra's patterns settled into a slower rhythm. What do you want to know? Better. Nolan nodded to Alara, who began configuring a dedicated pattern buffer for their Rendali prisoners. Let's start with why the Founders think your people are worth sacrificing in place of their precious Jem'Hadar. The Havoc hung motionless in deep space, equidistant from all three targets. Lexa stood at her tactical station, eyes half closed as she communed with the drone swarms. 3 holographic displays showed the approaching facilities. First target, supply depot. Minimal defenses, but heavily automated, she said, her voice rich with anticipation. Second, Ketracel White production. New shield geometry we haven't seen before. Third, cargo coordination center, spreading its power distribution across multiple nodes. Begin the dance, Nolan said. Lex's expression transformed into one of pure pleasure as her drones blinked into existence at all 3 sites simultaneously. At the supply depot, automated defense turrets tracked and fired with machine precision, but they were fighting yesterday's battle. The drones had already adapted their attack patterns. Look how they move, Lexa breathed, directing complex attack sequences. So predictable, so mechanical. The depot's defenses crumbled under her assault. At the Ketracel White facility, the new shields rippled and flexed, absorbing drone fire in ways they'd never encountered. Lexa's smile widened as she probed for weaknesses, testing angles and power levels. They think geometry can save them. Her drones found the resonance frequency, and the shields collapsed in cascading waves of energy. The cargo center proved more resilient, its distributed power grid allowing it to take significant damage while remaining operational. Lexa's fingers clenched as she coordinated precision strikes across multiple targets. They're learning, she gasped, lost in the flow of combat, but not fast enough. Never fast enough. Her drones executed perfectly timed attacks, severing power conduits in synchronized strikes until the facility went dark. Nolan watched her work, recognizing the familiar signs of Lexa's combat euphoria. She commanded her drones like extensions of herself, each movement precise, each strike calculated for maximum effect. The battles were over in minutes. 3 facilities reduced to debris, their adaptations proven insufficient. Lexa opened her eyes, satisfaction radiating from every pore. That was. She paused, composing herself. Educational. Quite, Ilara said dryly from her station. I've archived their defensive adaptations for analysis, though I suspect you'll remember every detail. Oh yes, Lexa purred, already anticipating their next encounter. Let them keep changing. Let them think they're getting closer to stopping us. She turned to Nolan. When do we hit the next targets? Nolan stood on a grassy hill overlooking the endless curve of the Ringworld's horizon. Commander Zyra walked beside him as groups of Rindali materialized in the valley below, bewildered but alive. 37,000 of my people, Zyra said, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing softly in the late afternoon light, reduced to living like primitives on your artificial world. The ring has everything you need, Nolan replied. Clean water, fertile soil, herds of food animals. You said your people are adaptable. You'll survive. Zyra watched as more of her people appeared, gathering in groups, already beginning to organize themselves. Why not just kill us, like your protocol does to the Jem'Hadar? The Jem'Hadar are weapons, Nolan said, built for one purpose. Your people made a choice, serving the Dominion, but still a choice. He turned to face her. Here, you have another choice. Life will be primitive here, Zyra acknowledged, her black eyes reflecting the permanent noonday sun. I don't know if we're prepared for this. I'll make you a deal, Commander. If I survive this war, I'll come back, take your people home. Zyra snapped a surprised glance at Nolan, assuming there's a home to go back to. Nolan watched the last group materialize. The Dominion doesn't forgive failure. No, Zyra agreed, they don't. She straightened, soldier's pride evident in her posture. Thank you for not killing us, though some might say this is a different kind of death. It's a beginning, Nolan said. What you make of it is up to you. He tapped his comm badge. Time to go. As he began to shimmer in the transporter beam, Zyra called out, Mercer, when you finally face them, the Founders, make it count. Nolan's last glimpse was of Zyra turning toward her people, her patterns brightening as she prepared to lead them in their new world. On the bridge of the Havoc, Alara waited at her station. That was unexpected. Sometimes the best way to win a war isn't to kill your enemy, Nolan said, settling into his chair. Sometimes it's better to show them a different path. The Dominion will assume you protocoled the Rinaldi, Alara pointed out. Is the Ringworld our new Rinaldi protocol? Nolan smiled at the idea. I told you when we found this place, there were people out there who would do well with a little Ringworld vacation. Speaking of vacations, Lexa interrupted, I have some suggestions for our next targets. Log. The station's ambient hum provided a quiet backdrop to his restless sleep. Sheets twisted around his body as he stirred in the grip of a dream. In his mind's eye, he stood in a different command center. A different Ilara, her eyes coldly calculating, coordinated thousands of ship movements. A different Lexa, lost in the ecstasy of destruction, directed wave after wave of attacks. And Brother, a presence he hadn't known in centuries, watched in silent approval. The fleet descended on populated worlds like a swarm of locusts. Cities vanished in balls of fire. Billions of voices cried out and were silenced. Victory after victory, planet after planet, the Mestat falling before their unstoppable advance. Then the pod, that hellish cocoon of wires and tubes, pushing into his flesh, into his mind. The endless war, the endless death, all of it flooding back. Nolan's eyes snapped open, a sharp inhale breaking the silence of his quarters. His heart pounded against his ribs as the dream images faded, leaving behind their familiar bitter taste. Beside him, Kilana stirred. She rolled toward him, her arm sliding across his chest, her head finding its place in the crook of his shoulder. The simple warmth of her presence began to chase away the cold echoes of his past. We've made progress on the protein sequences and base materials she began softly, her voice still heavy with sleep. Shh. Nolan quieted her, turning to press a kiss against her forehead. I missed you. Kilana made a contented sound, nestling closer until her body molded perfectly against his side. Her breathing soon settled back into the rhythm of sleep, her face peaceful in the darkness. Nolan lay awake, staring into the void above his bed. Images from his dream ghosted across his vision, pieces of a past he couldn't quite remember or couldn't let himself remember. The shadow of what he had been, of what he might become again. His arm tightened slightly around Kilana as the darkness seemed to deepen. In the quiet hours before dawn, even the most hardened warriors faced their demons. The station's lights would come up soon, bringing another day of war and challenge. But for now, in the darkness, Nolan Mercer lay caught between past and present, between tenderness and terror, between what he was and what he feared he might become. Fade to black.